This is the stuff dreams are made of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel. Hey, Ryan.
Hi, Dave.
How are you?
Really good. Really good. We're here again. I feel like this is our most...
Back again.
But this is we've really stuck at it this season. We started recording. We stuck to our plan.
Yep.
We banked episodes.
Ahead.
We got ahead.
Yeah.
So
I have no idea ever what day it is in the airing world, but I know what day it is in our world. Yeah.
But we've managed to not get into that panic where because every once in a while there's a Sunday that we can't make. You know, you have a life, I have a life. And our families make us have a life.
Yes.
And we missed from here to there, but we've stayed on it this year, and we're just going to kind of keep going, I think, until we run out of topics for the time being, and then we have to kind of restock, and we need an off season. I think we're going to keep going
until someone either pays us a lot of money to really do the show or pays us money to stop doing the show. One of those two things is going to happen.
That's a good plan. I mean, we could become such a nuisance that actually all of the auction houses get together and beg us to stop. The fans take up a collection because we keep highlighting the things they want to bid on in our auction shows and so on and so forth. But what's new in props this week, Dave? Do you have anything?
I don't have a lot. I have definitely a decision I made, which is, I guess, in the prop adjacent category. So obviously we had previously done our big Shining show with Lee's book, you know, the big $1,000 special Shining book, limited edition. And we obviously talked about it, and it is truly fantastic. And so, of course, like, you know, the great, drug dealers that Toshin is, I got an email this week from the guy at the Beverly Hills Toshin, and I got an email and a phone call, and it was just sort of like...
I just got the email.
Okay, and it was basically, so since you bought that book, we've got this new book, which is they've gone into production designer Ken Adams, who is responsible for the James Bond movies and a bunch of the Kubrick stuff, including, I think the quote on the back of the book is, I think it's from Steven Spielberg, saying that Ken Adams, the war room in Doctor Strangelove is like the greatest set of all, like the greatest set of all time.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is a war room.
This is a war room, yeah. And they're doing this giant, $1,000 book, whatever, and it looks glorious. And I got to be honest, I put my foot down and I was just like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it.
You're out.
Yeah.
Are you going to stick? Are you going to stick to that?
This is me saying I am not buying it. I'm done. I don't have the room. It just I can't. So no. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what's new in props is I did not buy the Ken Adams book. Is
a rare moment of self-restraint.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good.
How about you?
They sent me the same email, and they also, and on top of that, teased me with what else is coming this year, and that was also infuriating. And it's like, because I'm not going to be able to say no to that one. And I'm like, what's
coming? I don't even want to know.
I don't want to, because it was the man.
It was a truly secret. Big
so
secret. Gotcha.
I don't want to say and
understood. Yeah.
To the 5 listeners that pay attention to Toshin, but there's something really cool that definitely fits into at the very least, the Ryan Condal zeitgeist, if not the greater stuff dreams are made of zeitgeist coming later this year.
Interesting. I'm going to guess. Again, you can just fully blank, and we'll see later if I was right. I'm going to guess something Giger related. That's going to be my guess. So there you go. There's my guess. You'll let me know if I'm right later on. How about you? What's new in props? Anything? Any new pickups?
Actually, not terribly new this week, but we're a few weeks from starting to shoot the show. So I've been doing the sort of department tours.
So the answer is actual work has interrupted the purchasing of props. This is the time of year where work kicks in. Yeah,
but because of the show that I work on, as you know, Dave, as you get closer, you costume department once every few weeks, and then once every couple of days, and then and all that. So costume department, art department, and then more increasingly now that we're closer and closer, the props department, because we build so much. Everything on the show is bespoke and custom made. It just requires a lot of look, down to here's the flatware and plates that we're making for Dragonstone.
God bless. Show and tell is the best, isn't it? Show and tell,
and it's glorious. I mean, we have such a talented department, and everything they put in front of us is a feast for the eyes. And because of that, actually, we blessed tonight. I very nicely asked, and she very nicely agreed to come on. Ellie Murphy, our action props supervisor, action props, I think is her title. She will clarify for that for us, but she's the person that put anything that what we would call the hero stuff, the stuff that the characters interact with, tell the story, the things that they hold and touch. And
she is in charge of basically building all of that and wiping the drool from your mouth. Those are her two jobs.
And unlocking the cage to allow me in, and then locking the cage behind me, and then
thorough
searching
cavity search to make sure you haven't gone away with anything.
Unlocking the cage on the way out. Yes, correct. All of that. She does it with a smile and great dignity, despite how transparent my lust for everything in that cage.
Look over there. Look! Oh my God! What is that? Oh my God! What is that? Oh, nothing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Believe it or not, a dozen eggs from Tesco does not. It's not like the sand in Raiders. You can't just leave a little egg carton behind and walk out with. Yeah, it doesn't work. But they're lovely people. Very talented.
What's his name? Sapatoiches.
Yeah.
That's my impression. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Alfred Molina. We had a nice conversation with him.
Yes,
that
we
night.
got to meet the great Alfred Molina. That was very fun and nice. Yeah.
And we restrained ourselves too. Like he knew we were at a Raiders screening.
We did not club him on the back of his head and put him in our collection. So that was the definition of restraint.
That's right.
But
that's right.
Yeah. But it was cool. Yeah. He hadn't seen, if I remember correctly, he hadn't watched it himself in a couple of years, like since his kids were younger, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So he had nice things to say about it. It was a delight.
And speaking of House of the Dragons, that's a pretty good segue, if I say so myself. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yes.
Go for it, Ryan. I believe you deserve the honors.
It's one dragon. I just have to be very clear.
Oh, is it
one
really?
Dragon.
Oh,
we had a school. There was a school auction this weekend. And I put a couple of like small things into the auction, and it was under House of Dragons. And it's like, come on, guys. There's like a poster and everything. There's a show. There's a DVD. There's all sorts of stuff.
House of Dragons, I feel like it's what my mother would call your show. I feel like
yes.
You know what I mean? Like somehow leaving the off. Yeah. I watched the House of the Dragons.
Yeah.
House of Dragons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Dragon House, maybe is what you would
call
it.
Or the House of the Dragon. The old people is the House of Dragons, right? Or something like that. Anyway, warm welcome to somebody that certainly knows the title of the show because she works on it, Miss Ellie Murphy. Hi, Ellie.
Hello, Ryan. Hello, David. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us, Ellie. A real pleasure.
It's a very professional operation around here, as you can tell.
She's speechless. She's speechless.
Yeah,
and now she's running. Now we see what have I gotten into? Running.
Yeah. Oh no, please. She knows me. I'm in her office all the time, playing with her stuff and asking more questions.
I was about to say, we have a lot we want to get to, but
props
Ellie, is he the biggest pain in the ass showrunner you've ever worked with who cares more about props than any aspect of the show at all? Like pays no attention to casting, nothing, but just there constantly like,
I run on
any
set,
new props?
Push the actor out of the way so I can play with the prop. Yeah.
If I was to say anything about Ryan, it's that he's one of those people who comes up to me with like almost like bat-like ears that goes, oh my God, Ellie's talking. Oh, I love it. And I really like that in a man.
But you do know it's only when you're talking about props. Like if you started talking about your feelings, he would.
I don't have feelings. I only talk about props.
Oh well, perfect. Well,
no, I don't. None of that. Stop it.
Ellie works in the film business.
Woman. Finally, the perfect woman. Yes. Okay. Ellie, let us start at the very, very beginning. What is your proper title on the show, just for everybody who's listening? What is your exact title?
I am the action prop supervisor.
Very nice, very nice. And how long have you been doing props? Just give us a little sense of your background, like before you got to the Dragon House.
Before, the WhatsApp, the House of Facebook. I got to props. I've been bouncing around all kinds of departments in the film industry within the artistic side for about 10 years now. I've done art department, I've done set deck, props, armory, action vehicles, and all of it has very much centered around like trying to find my niche within all of that. And you can, like, set deck and props, they're very much knitted together in the UK. So I have found myself doing action props both from the set deck perspective and from props perspective, both of which are kind of the same facet of the same thing. Almost like God from various angles.
Very good.
Everything looks at props. You're always thinking about the close up, and you're always thinking about what the person is interacting with, whether it's small or large, and how that works and how you get every angle of it. I spend my life telling people like, oh yeah, we actually need to paint the bottom of this because it's an action prop. When you turn it upside down, you're going to see that bit too.
Right.
So yeah, I've always been interested in knowing what's in close up.
And is that the delineation of what makes it an action prop? Is it something that's going to be used in close in camera in the hero storytelling?
For action props particularly, I think what makes it an action prop is the ability to hold it in the air and like move it around. Like if a drawer on a cabinet is opened, it doesn't make it an action prop. But if you have a set of curtains that you have to pull down and like rip, that's an action prop.
Oh, but if the drawer is opened and things come out of the drawer, does that count as moving through the air? The stuff that comes out of the said drawer?
Yeah, I would say that the inside of the drawer, if you're taking it out, is, but the stuff that's beside the thing you're pulling out, that's set deck.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference there.
The dresser is set deck, but the stuff that comes out of the drawers is action props. Okay,
yeah,
that's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah.
But action and set deck work really, really closely together. So often you have this enmeshing that you almost can't see the line anymore.
Yeah, and for those, I was just saying, for those that don't necessarily know, I think that is here in America as well. I think the sort of the prop department, if you will, at least here in America, comes from the sort of set deck department that often people that end up in props, sometimes at least, unless their family does it, usually are starting in the set deck world in some aspect of that. At least that's
definitely the path here in the UK.
Yes, yeah.
I would say that if you're doing action props, you probably came from a set deck, particularly the buying background. So like most of the action props I've done in my life, I've done as a buyer within the set deck department. Like, you know, just even on Suffragette, I was a petty cash buyer. I had never done it before. And all of a sudden they were like, right, so we need 35 votes for women banners. And then that was it. That was the full instruction that I got. And I was just like, right, I've got to have those by next Thursday week. And I was like, well, I've got to... So I had to buy fabric and I had to hire a dress person, all of which we didn't have the access to within house. We had to like outsource it to a lovely lady called Eileen Driscoll, and I ended up in her basement being all like, I've got fabric and I've got this internet reference.
Right, here's a picture of what it should look like. Yeah.
And then you have it. Votes for women.
Oh, that's great. Oh, excellent.
That's my first action prop.
Oh, that's great. I love that you kept it too.
I mean, I couldn't not. At the end of small shows, they're just like, how do we get rid of all this stuff?
Well, you can have them call us. That's a separate discussion. We're willing on any show to just take everything. Literally, we'll figure it out later. So just as you go forth into the future, we'll take it all.
So typically, because I just getting an idea of the sort of somewhat complicated. It looks like a Targaryen family tree structure of the production design department. Props certainly under the greater banner of art department and production design, but then tends to be more associated with set deck versus the production designer, right? I mean, you interact more with Claire Richards, our set decorator, than you
but the
would
set
with Jim
deck
Clay.
Person is technically under the production. I mean, so
Correct.
it is a
thing.
It's a tiering
direct
system.
Reporting is different, but yeah.
So my direct report is the prop master, who takes care of dressing and action props. So I directly report to Lee Wiseman, and Lee Wiseman and Claire Richards work really closely together. So we have this great system where both of them are involved in the props that I make. I make sure that we're all chatting about it before I ever show it to like a showrunner or a director. House of the Dragon has been really, really good for making sure that props and set deck are working in tandem.
And Ellie, is this the first time you've worked with Lee, or did he hire you for this, or is that an ongoing relationship, or is that the prop master?
So Claire put me forward for the job and Lee hired me. Again, there's working in tandem. Yep. She had worked with me when I worked on Assassin's Creed and knew that I had done some good work on that, as I was action prop buyer, I was props department buyer, and I was prop making buyer all in one go. So
oh wow,
that was a bit of a whirlwind. Wow. But I had the one thing that stood out for me on that one was that I gained this sort of wheelchair that Michael Fassbender had to fit in, that I had to show to the director, and like in the show and tell, I was like wheeling around with the wheelchair, like going, look how fast I can turn in this lovely wheelchair. And she had kind of witnessed that, and it stuck in her memory. And when she got to House of the Dragon, she was like, I know the lady for this. So Lee called me up one day and was like, I need an action prop. And I was on season 1, I was action prop buyer and then promoted to action prop supervisor, because action prop supervisor is actually quite a new title in the UK. Because things are sort of changing and progressing into a more American way of doing things. So actually Lee has moved me up in the industry to a point where like I think there's maybe 6 action prop supervisors. So action prop buyers are more common, but it's really nice to know that we're actually getting to a point where we have a title that represents how many like producers and directors and everything we have to talk to, and how many, like the weight of that role. So that's been really nice to be part of.
And in your goal, if I'm allowed to ask career goals, are you on a journey to hopefully one day be a prop master? Is that what you're looking for in this industry, or other things, if you don't mind me asking?
A prop master in the UK covers the dressing side of things a lot more than it covers the action props. It's definitely like an ongoing change in the system. I would say that prop master is not my goal. I think my goal is to be at a point in my career where I'm influencing the stories that I like. And that is where I'm at right now. Like getting to pitch props that can sometimes change and rewrite the story is what I want to do. And if I can do that from my current position, or if I'm set decorator or, like president of Ireland, like if I can influence the stories that I want to influence, then I'm very, very happy.
That's great, and we won't cut to the chase yet, but there was a specific prop that we will talk about where Ellie kind of wrote it into the story, which we'll get there and talk about it. So she's already doing it. I was
going to tell you one very interesting thing, which is I went to, this has so nothing to do with props, but that's what makes this show great. Yeah, yeah. I went to a hearing this week for a renovation that we're trying to do here in Los Angeles. And we had to appear before a commission and everything, and you get your designs approved. And I learned retroactively that our architects on the plans, they were given kudos for not using the term master bedroom and changing it now to primary bedroom, because we try not to use the word master anymore. So I was wondering, as things progress, I wonder if the words prop master will continue. I'm just very curious. Yeah.
Prop primary.
Yes, exactly. Just throwing it out there in our woke community. If as woke brings down many banks, maybe they can change the prop industry as well. But anyway, I thought that was fascinating, the word master. So maybe, I don't know, wherever that fits in.
It's funny you should say that, because the historical way of moving titles up is to add master, prop master, drace master, master armorer. But now, as we're creating titles, we're adding things like lead or supervisor or coordinator, and all things that can be used by any gender. But I've also noticed quite a lot of women who move up in the industry to titles that are historical. They don't want to change it because that sets them apart from those who are already doing the job. So like the drapes master on season 1 of House of the Dragon is a woman, and she did an amazing job, but took drapes master because of the history behind it and the fact that she's a woman doing it. I think she's the second woman in the UK to be doing it, and the first woman is like another woman that I know, and she's stunning and amazing, and again deserves the title and the same kudos that the men before her got.
Right. God bless you for listening to that insane story I told and actually making a relevant point. So thank you for that.
You really turned it around, Dave.
Yeah, no, that actually, you really made what I said seem relevant. So thank you. Yeah.
Maybe you could have a supervising bedroom, Dave. Maybe really make clear who's boss.
Lead bedroom.
Yeah. There you go.
Lead bedroom.
There you go.
By the way, I will say, and I'm not looking to get into the politics of master. I understand why it's a problematic word, but Drape's Master is a really cool title. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
And they're all sound. They're all really great people. I've never met a Drape's Master I don't like.
Yeah.
That is I feel like when I was a kid looking at credits, sort of trying to figure stuff out, like that's the kind of credit that just like blew my mind, that like, oh my God, they had someone that was just in charge of the drapes. You know what I mean? Like it was sort of the, wow, how do movies work? That kind of a thing.
If you look back in time, you can see that, like, I mean, we watched all of James Bond there recently. I think I'm up to like middle of Roger Moore. And it's been really interesting to watch it go from like art director, designer on the James Bond credits.
Mm-hmm.
That's been really good.
Speaking of James Bond, really quickly, which is not of any help to anyone also, Ryan, I got suckered in and I bought that new Taschen book as well. I ordered it this week. The Adams book.
Ken Adam.
The Ken Adams.
very
another $1,000 down the drain.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to go
I don't know.
back.
Do you know Tosh and Ellie? But we're sort of obsessed. We just had. It's the big. They make all those big fancy art books, and they have this really cool film series where they actually did the James Bond archives. It's like this great book from Dr. No all the way up to I think they actually updated it with No Time to Die, so it like goes all the way through the entire saga, and covers the storytelling, where they shot on location. It's very deep kind of film stuff. But there's just a new book, because they get us every time. This new book that it's a double whammy, because they just came out with a making of The Shining book, which Dave and I are both obsessed with, and they're enormous and crazy expensive. And then they Ken Adams, the famous production designer from, I think back in the did he do Dr. No? Like he's back in the he did Dr. Strangelove, and
he definitely did Dr. Strangelove,
and all the Doctor movies, and Barry Lyndon too, Kubrick, the production designer, says this again, having nothing to do with the show. But
he is the king of the sort of like the volcano bad guy headquarters. Yeah. You know, if you think about James Bond movies, with like where you reach the bad guy's lair and it's just like, whoa, he's in a whatever it is. Like that's his really like the thing he invented.
Got it. Yeah. Have you ever seen a Batman cave you don't like though? I mean,
no.
There's none of them. They're all great.
They're all pretty darn interesting. I was going to say, for these books, the easiest way I can describe them to you in sort of like action prop terms is if you were doing a scene and like the showrunner said to you, it's an idiot's house and he's an idiot and it's full of these giant books that he has overspent money on. We want to be able to take them out and look at them, but he also never really actually looks at them. And that's the easiest way I can describe these books. That's how
we want an idiot that wants to appear literate, but from the novelty size of the unreadable books is clearly not, and also has no spending control. Go. And it would be just my library. And Dave's. So your first job was suffragette?
So my first job was Far From Band and Crowd. And if I was to give you my favorite day of that, it was the day I was sent with a shovel and a wheelbarrow and told to build a road in a field. And I was just like,
that seems outside your scope.
I believe that
is the master using a sort of having found some sort of slave, I believe, in this case. Yeah, that doesn't sound like real work. I'm not sure that's legal, but okay.
I had this shovel and the wheelbarrow and like a load of dirt in the back of my Ford Focus. And I arrived and there was more dirt available. And I was like, how did the dirt get here? What's going on? I don't understand. So I've got to build a road from here to there. I was like could not see where the end of the road was. Like they made me walk it like on the phone to them, just like, have I walked enough? That now I've walked enough. Okay, got it. I hung up the phone to my supervisor and I sort of stared into the sky and I picked up the phone again. I was like, Dad, I've been asked to build a road. And he was just like, all right, who do you know in the area? I was like, I've no Mike the farmer. And he's like, does Mike the farmer have a tractor? And does he have a trailer? Yes, he does. So Mike the farmer ended up driving me down along where this road was supposed to be, with me in the back of the trailer with the shovel, like shoveling out the dirt and him moving along. And about 2 hours later, I rang my supervisor. I was like, so the road built? There's what? No, you weren't supposed to be able to build the road. We were supposed to have to ask for more labour. I was like, oh, I've ruined the plan.
Well, no one told me that. Yeah.
I wish you told me, because I've solved it and I've built the road.
Was there a moment as you were riding on the tractor and shoveling the dirt and whatever that you just sort of said to yourself, Hollywood kind of a thing? Like, is there a moment of that? The movie
Wiped
business,
your brow, and you're like, I've arrived.
I can't say that was the next year. I think we built a wall, and I think I had to call Mike the farmer again. I definitely
like this guy.
But I also was, he was amazing. He did so much work for that film. I like every time we needed something, somebody was like, "Will we call Mike the farmer?" Mike the farmer turned up every time. We're like, "Oh, you need like all of this dirt or half of my trees," and he'd just turn up, and he was great. And then at the end of the film, we were like, "Can we give you something? We want it. Like we've put together this money that we thought we'd have to pay you. Can we pay you it?" And he was like, "No. Give it to the air helicopter, like the air ambulance." He never took any money. He was brilliant. But I think that adds to the magic of movies, is that you go around the place, like filming in Dorset and filming in here and there, and just the locality gets behind you. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I from a sort of different perspective, as I say, walking around our crazy set all the time, I'm just always amazed at the level of skill and competence that you meet at every kind of different. Basically, if you're on a film set and you have a problem, even if it's not related to the film, there's somebody there can solve your problem. If it's the engine drops out of my car, I have a traumatic injury, I need to get my kids into school. There's somebody on the set that can actually, and it's never me, it's never the writer,
and it's usually Mike the farmer. Usually
somebody else.
Mike, you got to get my kids into school. All right, fine.
Yeah.
You would too.
Get in the tractor.
Yeah, I mean, I love the melting pot that is the film industry, because I definitely came from film school. But I'm one of very few that have come from film school. Everybody else around us is like, I used to be an electrician, and I was a carpenter for years, and I was a builder, and now I'm the key grip. You're like, but I mean, the maths adds up, because skilled people end up getting places if they know how to apply that in different circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't mind me asking both you guys, does the UK still have, I feel like when I was sort of over there, not working, but visiting like 10 years ago, there was sort of a sense, and sometimes just from reading, of like the sort of the families that kind of go into an aspect of something, like, like a family of, like, the dad was a best boy, the son was a best boy, the grandson is, like, where like the family business is some aspect of, is that still kind of going on, or perhaps not as much? I was just kind of curious.
I think there's a bit less of it than there was, and what there is of it, those I know that are historical families are not like in your face. Like, you'd almost forget that they
No,
had
I'm not
a history
saying that,
in the film.
Gotcha.
Like I don't feel like they're pushing it as a way of being. I think there's a lot more, because the industry is getting bigger and stronger here, and also in Ireland, there's a bit more like there's companies like Skillset who are getting in, like people who've no contacts in the industry. This is how they're getting in, and also people who work in prop houses are ended up working in the film industry, and companies like Filmbase, where you can like put, this is my skill set and this is the job I want. I'm a new person to the industry, and you can get picked up and go. And that's how quite a lot of people end up in like graphic design, because they've been graphic designers in the real world. And there's a bit of it, but not as much.
We'll get into the House of Dragons very shortly, but I just wanted to ask, because we do talk about Star Wars quite a bit on this podcast. Can you tell us what you did for Star Wars, Ellie?
I was action vehicles buyer on the 9th episode of Star Wars, and what I did was I bought all of the things that the vehicle makers like kind of made into the vehicles. So the base vehicle was often made between SFX and construction, but then like everything that went on the vehicle was made within the action vehicles department, all the Greeblies and the Needlies and all of that stuff. So I got to visit quite a lot of like airplane breakers, train breakers, boat breakers, army surplus suppliers, and just like find all of the nice bits to put on it and bring it back to the makers, and they would then put it on the vehicles. Everett Aero was one of the best places I've ever been, where I rang them up and I was like, hey, I hear you're a plane breaker, and I'm working on a show that could use some of that stuff. And they were like, I've never heard of anybody ever wanting to buy anything for a show. Like loads and loads of people in the UK had already heard of us looking for Greeblies and Neeblies. And then Everett was just this family-run place with like what looked like a mansion and a helicopter at the front, and there's a jet engine, and you're just like, Genie Mac, this is nuts. And I think the best thing I saw there was I'd never heard of Monkjack. I was like, why have you got 30 tiny deer running around in your field among the helicopters and Chinooks? And this is very strange. I've never heard of these. And they were like, that's a Monkjack. I'm like, no, sounds like fairy tales to me. But yeah, wonderful. So that's what. And then my favorite thing was that I found a texture, because you always had to find textures, and that ended up like all over a lot of the sets. And it was just
cool,
an anti-fatigue mat that we molded and cast, and it ended up like all over these walls. And I've actually seen it in Andor again, so it means it got used again.
Oh, awesome.
So when you grab something like that, were you just were keeping an eye out for, like, this is interesting and I'll just grab it because they've said keep your eye out for something interesting? Oh, that's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely the military supplies and the airplane breakers were the most interesting ones, and sort of the advice was to look at the inside of something and then turn it inside out, and that's how you design the planes and trains and automobiles of Star Wars. Was to just turn everything inside out. We did a lot of buying of airplane trolleys, because all of the bits on that just come apart and you're like, oh, all of this is great. And the prop makers loved it, because what we did was you just gave them this giant basket of bits and went, go nuts.
It's so funny because when they were making the original Star Wars models, back in whatever 75, 76, whatever that would have been, they were the story obviously goes that they were kind of kit bashing the model kits and kind of like pulling out just weird little bits and pieces and then kind of gluing them onto these models. And basically you were doing that in real life. You were basically, instead of models, you were finding like live things, but interesting pieces of things and going on. That is really, really wild. When you look through those when you watch the movie now, do you see like parts you remember besides the texture? Do you see like, oh yeah, I remember that thing from the helicopter? Do you see like things like that? Do they jump out at you?
It's one of the art directors I work with came up with a really great idea to use bits of a gimbal inside of all the code names are still in my head and I can't think of his name. Kylo Ren's vehicle. What
was his code name, or did the vehicle have a code name?
It was like, I don't know, Dark Wasp or something.
Okay.
Something like that was the name of his vehicle. I don't know. Everything was a city in America. I don't know. I'm probably not supposed to say that still, but it doesn't matter. The film is out.
The film's out. I think we're gonna be okay. Yeah,
it's fine. Dark Wasp or something, and the way that the gimbal that you'd hold a camera on moved was the way his vehicle moved. And Richard came up with this great idea to do it, and then we had to buy it, but nobody knew what to buy. So I remember I was like texting my fella who's a cameraman, like, how do I buy a gimbal? All the websites are very confusing, and he had to then email me back a link to the gimbal, and I was like, oh. Well, that makes sense, and but also that's again the collaboration of film is constantly having to like text a person who knows somebody. I had to do on the Union. There was like a whole bit. We had a medical exam where we examined Mark Wahlberg, and I've got some medical people in my family, and I just texted the family WhatsApp group. Is this the right thing for like a physical, and then a photo, and they're like, who are you doing it on? What's wrong with them? I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with them. It's just a movie.
Is that what? Did they retitle that? That was Our Man in Jersey, right? But they've retitled that.
It's the Union now, so that's what it'll come out as. So I'm excited to see that one. That was quite fun to work on.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the gang went off to work on that in between, because it nicely sandwiched in between
the schedule,
season 1 and season 2. Yeah.
I think
I liked Our Man from Jersey because that I always said, oh, that's like me.
Yeah, but also like we didn't hire you to be Marky Mark, so we had to change it to the Union.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because I know the deal didn't work out. They weren't giving you the money you wanted.
Yeah, I guess he didn't really seem like
he's constantly picking up my scraps.
I was going to say when you were doing like when you were working on Ep9, did you ever call a place and be like, "Hi, I'm working on a movie and we need pieces of something," and they would just go, "Oh yeah, Star Wars movie," like they just knew.
There was a lot of that. There was a lot of I can neither confirm nor deny that I'm working on. I'm definitely working upon what I can tell you that.
But I need pieces of something that could be turned upside down and pasted on a spaceship. Yeah, but it's not necessarily Star Wars. Yeah,
it's it's definitely something else that's sci-fi. It's not that one. No, don't worry about it. Yeah,
how many spaceships did you have in the Suffragette, Ellie?
How many spaceships did I have in Suffragette? I had 0 spaceships in Suffragette. What I had was a knocker-upper pea shooter. That was very interesting. So we had to get the little copper pipe, like about that long, and had to get multiples of it and get it bashed up to the right size and the right size peas. I bought a lot of dry peas. And then the other very interesting one we had on that was I had to get the right gauge and the exact right type of plastic that could go up Carey Mulligan's nose and feed her milk because she was in prison. No spoilers. Sorry for the spoilers, but also she has to be fed through a tube and there was a funnel and it was a whole thing where we had to like make sure it closed off so the milk didn't actually go up her nose. It's like a whole bit. It was great.
Wow.
And the right size right color of brown paper, because it's really hard to get brown paper in the right price bracket for a film that small that looks like old brown paper.
It looks like old brown, yeah.
Oh, like old butcher paper, that kind of thing. Very cool.
That kind of thing, yeah. Because we had all these parcels of laundry in it.
Right. And how much, when you're like making these things, because you mentioned like, and you had to get a bunch of them, like in your world these days, are you still finding that you're like having to find like, forgive me, like 20 of them or a whole bunch of them, as opposed to something that you can find and then it makes more sense to like, I don't know, like 3D scan it and mold, like where's that line exist, or is it always moving and it depends on what it's being used for?
It really depends on what you're making. Yeah. It really, really massively depends on what you're making. I mean, the optimum, we've got 2 units on House of the Dragon, you know, like we've got Fire and Blood, and we like both of them to definitely have the character props on their trucks. But, you know, with some things they're like either so expensive or so difficult to make that it's impossible to make sure that they have them. So you just end up on this merry-go-round of ringing up Fire unit to say, oh, I need that to get to Blood unit, and you go round and round and round and round. Particularly when, like on any other job, when you have second unit, you try and make sure you're repeating the props, not giving the hero props to the second unit. So that kind of influences it. And also your budget influences it. So like on small things, it's always like max 3 repeats. On medium things, you try and go for 7. On really, really big things, like on Assassin's Creed, I think I bought 20 towels for Michael Fassbender. And he didn't use a single one. And I was really annoyed. And on the Union, I had to buy towels for Marky Mark. And I was like, I'm not wasting them again. They can't just like disappear into a storage unit somewhere to get moldy and never be seen again. So we gave all of Marky Mark's unused towels to one of the guys at work. James has his parents run a foster home. So they got all the towels.
That's great. Good.
So that was really good. And also when you get plastic cups for breakaways, like as in when you don't want to break away and you're about to do a stunt, those plastic cups, we bought tons of them for the Union because we had so many restaurant scenes or not necessarily restaurants, but places where like tables get flipped, or so all of those, like the standard of glass you get that's plastic and doesn't break is the same that you need in that particular type of foster home. So we sent all of them to there. That was like a nice way to recycle the props and make sure they're being used.
The foster home also got 3 land speeders.
They did, yeah. Don't tell anyone. Yeah.
And a lot of Valerian steel. Is it hard, Ellie, with the 2 units? With pointy ones.
I don't do the pointy ones.
But with Fire and Blood and the 2 units and the sort of like the hero prop going back and forth, is it hard when sometimes you go to look for the hero prop and you realize it's in the showrunner's house? Is that hard to do a show like that? Is it difficult?
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of the like.
I'm very respectful, Dave. I always ask, and it happens at the end of the production, not while we're filming.
You're still making the show. You're still technically making the show. You have another season. You probably have a few more.
But that's it's a new deal. We make all new stuff. So speaking of, I just wanted to talk about a bunch of the cool things that you guys and your team made for our show. And I mean, I thought we can kind of go wherever. And if Ellie, if there's anything that specific that you're super interested in that you want to bring up, please do. I was just going to start with the eggs and the accompanying accoutrements, because that was something that was really exciting for me. We did a bunch of research and development and fits and starts on that, because we were trying to figure. We realized a lot of the things in this show you do. Oh, okay, well that existed in the original series, and then you look at it and you're like, well, either 200 years have passed, and how's that changed, and does the style or technology change? But with dragon egg is a dragon egg. What I don't think anybody really thought of going into this was that they were fossilized dragon's eggs in the first one. So we actually had to take that look and figure out what is a viable
unfossilized one
work like. A living egg. What does that all look like? And so I would love for you to just kind of talk through the process of how we went through all that, because I found it really cool and fascinating, and I was delighted every time we saw a new iteration of those, and your attention to detail and all the little things that we did to make it feel real and textured and all that.
So dragon eggs were they're very dear to my heart. I almost feel like they're my dragon babies. When I got onto the job, the dragon eggs were kind of already a conversation point, and I saw the moment where they were in need of some greater attention, and I swooped in and was like, they're my dragon eggs. They're my dragon eggs now. And worked with the prop makers to make sure they came into our world. There was a lot of conversation about like, what do they look like? The influences were coming from various stones and like pearlescence, and whether or not they look like living items, how the light shines on them, all of that was coming into it. And in order to really get to grips with like what the dragon eggs look, there was a lot of conversations about whether or not the scales should be on them at this point, or whether or not we want them to have the scales. And then eventually there were one was 3D printed, and then that 3D print is the hero egg that has influenced all the rest of them. And like we have to mold that one repeatedly. And I think that 3D print was like extortionately priced for 3D prints, because it was in the early days of anything that large being 3D printed. So worked together with, like Ellie, who was the action prop painter on that, spent months just painting eggs of top to toe and making sure like that they grade down in terms of color from top to bottom, working with train moss to add some lichen to it, because there's this whole deal where like baby Balon's egg is one of those ones that may or may not hatch, or is sort of an influencer for whether or not baby Balon will. So I don't know.
We did, because we really leaned into this idea that they live in very hot and humid environments. So we had this whole sort of, depending on how old the egg is and how long it's been kind of out of the egg sac, some of them have this kind of lichen growing on the bottom, the sort of the place that doesn't get any, so the place that kind of sits in the in the warming chamber or wherever it lives inside the dragon pit or the dragon mont, and it collects this kind of out of the sort of real biological world where there's this whole circle of life where other organisms rely on certain organisms to exist. So this part of the way
they're feeding off the egg, aren't they?
Yeah, and protected and cooled maybe, or shielded by this kind of lichen-y fungus growth thing that grows on some of the eggs. So it's sort of fascinating. And then we played with, I remember playing a lot with the scales, because if you look at the egg, it's a scaled thing, and I remember how the scales sort of sit on top of each other and oriented, and we were trying to make it not look too uniform so that it didn't look like a built thing, but something out of the natural world. So getting them to overlay in a sort of random pattern.
And again, scales that look, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, scales that look alive and current, as opposed to fossilized and stone, like more like the scales of a dragon itself to some extent, or at least alive, a sense of biology to it, I guess.
What's interesting about the scales on it is that they're not flat scales like overlapping each other. They have a natural wave in them that adds to more to the paint texture of it. So on camera you can't really tell that they're kind of wibbly scales, but they do add that sort of shine to it, where when the light moves around or when the camera moves, they shine in a kind of an unnatural way, which I really enjoy. And if I enjoyed anything about the eggs, it was how many different eggs we had to make for every like egg situation. Like every time we had an egg, it was like, this egg has to go through this process and this process and this process. So this one has to be able to go in a fire, and this one has to be able to be thrown at Rhaenyra. So that's got to be soft. How do we do a soft egg with the same paint texture? Right. Well, that's going to take some research. And how do we make that egg come out of a nest without losing the paint? And it was really funny because Peter, the prop maker, he came up with this great idea to use I think it's veterinary lube is in the inside of the egg nest, and that doesn't take the paint off.
I'm familiar with veterinary lube. I'm familiar with it, yeah.
And I think that's great. I think the amount
you
of
and
things
Farmer Mike, Dave.
Yeah. Farmer Mike and I have had some pretty wild nights with our veterinary lube. But anyway, go on.
But it's just the amount of things that the eggs have to go through influences what they're made of, and I particularly enjoy that bit of the job. It's the challenge of making it look like the prop you want it to look like while going through all the things it has to go through, even though it's not a real thing. But it is a real thing because dragons are real.
They are very real. Prop Store, the world's leading entertainment memorabilia auctioneer at PropStore.com, makes it easy for you to add cherished items to your collection and pay them off in a time frame that suits your lifestyle.
You can do payment plans. For auctions, Prop Store typically allows up to 3 months interest-free payment plans for hammer bids totaling $1,000 or pounds or more. And for buy now purchases, they allow up to 6 months, which is even better.
Oh, that's good. They also take credit cards. While other companies may only allow you to pay a small portion of your bill with a credit card, you can pay up to 25,000 pounds or dollars of your Prop Store purchases using your credit card. And you can easily set up your payment plan to be charged directly to your credit card every month, allowing you even more time to pay off your purchase.
Crypto and PayPal. Do you have some crypto or PayPal funds? I mean, if you've got some crypto, by the way, you might want to get rid of it right now and just use it for your Prop Store purchase.
I kept all my crypto in Silicon Valley Bank, so I'm very satisfied with all of my investments. Yeah.
You know, by the
way,
I
also have a bit in Credit Suisse as well.
I was going to just tell you, this is apropos of nothing. I legitimately, like, all kidding aside, I bank at Signature Bank in New York. That's my bank.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, everything's fine, but holy crap. There was a moment on that Sunday where it was just like, what the fuck is going on? But anyway, if you've got crypto, if you've helped bring down our current economy, use your crypto or PayPal at Prop Store. Through BitPay, customers can select from a variety of popular cryptocurrencies. This feels like it was written 5 years ago, to purchase items in auction from Prop Store, or use PayPal to pay for buy it now orders up to 2,000 pounds or dollars.
You can also pay with consignments, so trade in those old props, costumes, posters, music memorabilia, original art pieces, comics, or collectible toys for something new. Increase your buying power by consigning items now to Prop Store's next auctions. Cash advances are available for quality consignments over pounds/dollars of 5,000. Email consign at propstore.com if you have items that you'd like to discuss.
I'm a big fan of that one. I am definitely in the phase of my collecting where if I buy something, or if I know I'm going to buy something, I like to give some stuff to sell to help make me feel better about the process, and pay for it, obviously, but also makes me feel a little better that some stuff is going out when other things are going in. And of course, as always, go to propstore.com right now to check out all the different things you can purchase in Prop Store's latest auctions, or leverage that 6-month payment plan to buy a buy it now item. And if you get that buy it now itch, use the Dave10 or Ryan10 discount code to get 10% off your buy now orders, and vote for your favorite podcast host at the same time. I am not even going to add anything to that. I fucking give up. So there you go. Just put the Ryan10 and put me out of my misery. I don't care.
Thank you, Prop Store, for the sponsorship.
So much, please. On the, I'm just curious, Ryan, on the art side, maybe even in the whatever, the R&D, if you will, of the eggs, did you guys peek just even for a second at, like, obviously, like Alien and Aliens? Like, did you peek at those eggs, like, just in terms of thinking about eggs at all? Just even from a research standpoint.
I did not. I mean, I imagine
curious,
these guys. I imagine these guys did.
So you were just looking at Alien and Aliens for the heck of it. That had nothing to do with work.
Yeah, great. That was okay. That was purely pleasure. No, I think we just started from a place of we were actually looking at dragons a lot because we were trying to. I remember at some point we were trying to figure out what the scales on the egg should look like. So we were looking at dragons to figure out how do you scale down the scales to make them. To make it feel like a living organism, because that was the biggest trick, and a lot of that came in with the painting process, which is incredible. And they actually you can't see it. I mean, maybe we can find a picture and we'll post it on the feed to show. But on the scales themselves, there's even another texture in the scale to create more of that when the light comes over it. So you have the scales, and then you have the thing on the texture in the scale, and then you have the sort of iridescent color that's made to look like it's metallic, like it's a precious or a semi-precious stone, and it's painted in this gradation, which still blows my mind because it's so interesting how it's done, and it does really appears metallic until you go and touch it. And I remember when Ellie was showing off and her team were showing off the first kind of go at the finished eggs. She said, one of these is throwable, and we had to like pick out which one it was, and like you couldn't even tell. Until you picked it up, you could not tell which was which, and that was always my favorite, because that was for one specific gag. So they kind of did that for one of the eggs. That's when Damon and Rhaenyra are showing off on the bridge over Damon's stolen dragon egg, and he tosses it to it at the end.
He walks away from her at the end and throws it to her. Yeah.
Credit to Millie Alcock. She caught it every time. She did not drop that egg once. She's if the acting thing doesn't work out, she's suited for American football or rugby. Very, very good hands on that one.
I think I was afraid that it would be yeeted at her so hard that it would just like straight in the face.
He did it different every time, because it's Matt sort of keeping it interesting. So over the shoulder, behind the back, every time it sort of a different release point every time. But she got it every time.
It, like, catch it.
Credit to Millie. Going from there, I sort of teased this earlier. And we'll get back, because there was another very specific egg that you guys built, but that was more associated to the place where it lived. And this was a thing we were sort of looking for a vessel to transport the eggs in, because we have this whole order built up around the dragons, and you have the dragon pit in King's Landing, which looks like a mausoleum. It looks like a holy house of worship, with the dragons being the gods. And then on Dragonstone you have the Dragon Mont, which is the mountain that the Dragonstone Castle is built into. So it's the sort of the natural dragon pit where all the dragons go to stay close to the heat source of this volcano that's inside of the island of Dragonstone. It's why the Targaryens settled the castle in the first place. And then you have all these dragon keepers, which are the sort of the monastic order around the control, care, and feeding of the dragons, the guys that are sort of dressed like Akira Kurosawa characters that speak in High Valyrian, that have all burn scars from their work with the dragons. But because of that, it seemed like there was this sort of religiosity around the care of the dragons, and the eggs being these precious objects that are priceless in themselves, because not only are they super interesting and valuable, but inside is a future nuclear weapon. It felt like there needed to be something around if you were going to move one from place to place, there had to be this thing to do it. So we weren't really sure what that was, and then so Ellie can kind of take it from here. But she and her department came up with this conveyance for them.
It was actually the first prop I pitched on the show, which was really, really fun. Actually, it was while you were going around set deck, and Claire took a break from. I think she was having a water break, and she went, "Oh, Ellie's got some things to show you. Ellie's got some," and I didn't know I was talking in that meeting, so it was kind of like, "Oh, okay. Well, I've got this thing," and I pulled up this mood board of like various, like either copper or Chinese vessels of ancient origin, and I said, "Hey, you know the way the eggs are being transported all the time, and it doesn't really say what they're being transported in. I know you've never met me before, but how about we have this egg warmer thing that I'll come up with a better name for, but it's got like hot coals in it, and you put the egg in it, and it's got a little basket to hold the egg in it, and when you open it, we might have steam come out. How about that? And I remember like feeling quite nervous because I think I was on the job about a week and a half, and I'd read the script over Christmas, and I was definitely like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing here. I'm definitely pitching something that might be wildly wrong. And I was like, so we could have this egg warmer. And I remember you had a little think about it, and then came back and was like, yeah, I think we'll check that with George, but I think that sounds good. And then I was like, but what about these keeper staffs? And I immediately was like, next, I'm gonna have a second. I want a second success. I crave it. Anybody? Alison Spittle has a great thing about compliment custard, a great bit. She's like, oh, I love a bit of compliment custard. I can just eat it all day, even just compliment custard all day. I love it. I live on compliment custard. So I immediately was like, keeper staffs. You need something to control the dragons, but you don't want to hit them because they're giant. So we'll have these keeper staffs, and they're really long. They're like a Mongolian shepherd stick. And I was like, please like it. I'm sure on the outside it was probably quite calm.
Went with those. Yes, we went with those too. I forgot that was on the same day, but yeah. So they built these kilns. The big. They kind of look like sort of.
That was the better word. That was the better word. You wrote it into the script and you named it.
The writer came up with that, but it was all working together. But no, it was great, and we never call it out in the dialogue in the show, but you see the keepers walking around with it. It's 2 carry handles. They're so big it takes 2 of them to carry it. They settle it down. They have these gloves that they use to pull the lid off, and then thanks to special effects and all that, steam billows out. There are glowing hot coals inside, and the egg sits in there, and then you understand how it's protected on a long journey if it has to make a move from the Dragon Pit to the Red Keep, or if somebody is reclaiming one from the rogue prince who stole it and took it. And
I'm really curious, just for a second. So Ryan, just from a I guess I'll simply say from a script perspective, it was just something that I'm not trying to go, it hadn't occurred to you, but whatever, or something you just kind of wrote through and figured we'll figure it out later, or hadn't even thought about what are they in? Like, was it on your mind? Like, what are they in? Or were you just
not like, really? I think, right. I think in that this is going back to the world where we were purely living in. There's a point when the scripts are to me they're a novel, and you're just writing the story, and some things occur to you that they're going to need a ship to get there, but I think it was just he steals a dragon egg and then he takes it.
And the how. And then Ellie, from your perspective, when you're reading these scripts, you're new to the job, you get your scripts are sent to you and you're reading it. You're reading it with, I guess I'll simply say, sort of a prop eye of like, are you just like going through and circling things? So if you see somebody saying like they bring them out, your first instinct is just in what? What does that mean? They bring like are you just like keying in on those things? Like, is it just an eye and an ear for like, this might be something. What's this? Where's that? Like, is that how you tackle your job? I guess I'm trying to, from the earliest moment of being given a script on a new gig, so to speak.
I think what I'm looking for when I read a script first is that I want to love the story. So I always read the script first, and then in the second reading, that's when I'm looking for the props and I'm circling things and I'm thinking about it. I remember the things that struck me in my second reading of the full set of scripts that I've been sent on, like circling things over Christmas, was I definitely wanted to pitch the kiln. I definitely wanted some input on the pig with wings, and I definitely wanted like to be involved in like the king's cane, and like those were the 3 things that really struck me.
When we dressed up the pig as the dragon, Dave.
Right. Oh my God, the pink dread was possibly the thing I was looking forward to the most. Like, I loved my dragon eggs, but the pink dread was brilliant.
It was a proud moment in our writer's room.
It was great. And even just watching people like add to the idea, like I definitely wanted it to feel like it was made of natural materials that children could get from the Red Keep courtyard. Like, so they've stolen all these bits and put it together like really crap, but also like, just my buyer was then like tasked with putting it on the pig like for a test and a photo, and she was just like, do you know what would make this really interesting if they just stuck some peacock feathers in it? And she did this photograph, and we ended up showing it to the director and immediately liked it. And so the pig with wings had peacock feathers. And you're like, why does it have that? But because it's funny. Because it adds to the humor.
That's great. That's great. Speaking of reading scripts, I'm one of my favorite movie set jokes. Dave, I don't know, Elliot, I've ever told you this, but do you know how a prop master reads Hamlet? Bullshit, 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 skull. That was from the great Juan Campanella. Told me that joke on our Colony pilot, and I laughed ever since.
It's a good joke.
I might steal that one. There's a prop bin of jokes that I'm trying to. There's like all prop men have their prop bin of jokes that they have to pull out every now and again. Yeah. So I'm working on it.
I forgot. I actually forgot the pig wings, and that was because some of these they obviously that was interactive, but some of those kind of blur. Is that like the animal guys, and like is that set? We were talking about dressing horses the other day, because with all their sort of regalia, and that falls into the set deck.
That's set deck.
So
yeah,
the horses are part of the set. But I was going to talk about which I just love as a book nerd, is all the beautiful books that you guys make and the illuminated manuscripts and having to create those. And some of those are, that's sort of in combination with our graphics department, which also falls under art department. But any book that one of the hero characters has to interact with, you guys have to go in and figure out, okay, how many pages do we need? And then we had that really crazy book in the first episode that needed a page torn out of it, and tearing a repeatable page out of a thing that you're going to do all day long. How do we do that?
I cannot tell you the heartache involved in that page rip.
I remember. But you were so proud when you guys demoed that to us. You were so proud, and it worked really well.
It did work really well the second time we filmed it. Yeah.
Does the page
not the first time?
Does the page go back in, or are there just multiple pages that you can pull out, or is there multiple versions that you just keep pulling and they're one of a kind?
I think it was the centerpiece was. Oh, I can't remember. Alicia worked really well on it. So the page that you wanted to rip out was part of like a sheaf of like 4 pages, and the 4 pages was what stuck in.
Gotcha.
So that was the page that then ripped out. But I think it had to be like prepped so that it like ripped the same way each time, and you didn't see the pages behind it, which were a Bible. Because I can't tell you the amount of defiled Bibles in my life, because it's the easiest giant book you can have.
We have a demand for these all really old, big, thick tomes, and it's just that's where you go a lot. And I remember, I don't think it was you, but it might have been you, but I remember JC, who is our standby, coming to us that day and saying, we can do this 10 times.
Yes. Like
very, very seriously. Like we have 10 ghosts. That's what we have. So let's use them wisely.
The most important thing to do in the morning is tell you how many repeats you have. I had to tell a director at one point on that job, you have 6 goes of this glass break. And I don't think that they felt that was enough. And I definitely was like, maybe I've got my amount of repeats in this job wrong. And then it went up from there. I was like, I definitely need to provide more repeats now. It needs to be like 12, but I only tell them 10.
Oh yeah, there you go. Undersell it.
In Veep World, our version of that was always like doing like balloon drops on like election nights, and it was always sort of like you really don't want to have to do more than like 2 or 3 of the, it's like that's going to be really it. And
back to 1.
Yeah, it would always be this thing of like, all right, let's just do it 5 times without the balloon drop, just so that everybody kind of gets up to speed. You know what I mean? And we'll go balloon drop and then like stop there and kind of, because these are really going to count. But no breakaways and breakables and whatnot. That makes sense. I was curious about one thing, which is, or I wanted to make one other comment, which is there's nothing better. I will say this truly as somebody that works on shows. There's nothing better than opening in a scene, a book on a set, and seeing like when the prop person has filled that book with stuff. And sometimes in that world of, we just said there'd be text, and then you open it up and you just see whatever it is, or it's a photo album or stuff. And I've maybe mentioned this, the prop person on Veep, anytime Selena ever opened up a photo album, it always had like pictures of like actually Julia sometimes as a child, like she'd gotten photos, and you just go, oh man, they were on it. I honestly, it may be the best feeling about your prop person that you can ever have is when you open a book and it's full of stuff. So wherever that fits in, it's my favorite.
It's always super detailed, and we have we have other languages. We have Valyrian. I mean, when we make something, it's super complicated, and again, these illuminated manuscripts, so it requires so many different disciplines just to make those couple of pages. But that, I mean, I always think of that book. It's the book that Allison and Rhaenyra are reading under the tree in the first episode, because she's paging through it and you're kind of over them. So we had, even though it was a converted Bible, there were a number of hero bespoke hand painted pages in that book, and it's just, I mean, the artistry is just incredible. And I wish there was a way to have it all on screen. I mean, we should do, at the end of this, we should do a book about the books of House of the Dragon, and just do like a printed coffee table book of books, because they're so interesting. And a lot of times, sometimes it's sort of lorem ipsum, but done in Valyrian. But other times it's hero stuff we have one of the writers, or sometimes our script coordinator, writing actual content to go into these things, or the Raven scroll, the letter that that's being opened on screen. Are we going to see it as a hero? Are we over it? Are we not?
It was the Jaehaerys scroll that I felt was the one where everybody's like, how do you say we pick Viserys, but in more words? Yeah. Like more, don't just write Viserys on a scroll. Like, oh, you're a winner. You're the star.
Congratulations. You may have just won.
Yeah.
I definitely like troubleshot that with Alicia like a few times. Like, how do you extend that into like something more elaborate than that? And that was actually quite an interesting one to do, because it had to be like inside a scroll, and we had to have resets, and the scroll had to be in the box, and the box, it was like just everything was inside in each other. And it was, how do you make this like a really big thing, but that actually just says Viserys?
Yeah. And Ellie, he opened it up and he said, La La Land.
I was going to ask Ellie, how many times when you're working like with a director where they're just like, they're just going to open the scroll, but I'm over here. We don't need to see what's on we're never going to see what's on the scroll. Do you just make sure there's something on the scroll just in case? Because there's no way you get into that scene and they don't go, oh, let's just do a quick insert. Yeah.
It comes back to the prop has to be seen upside down and inside out. Every action prop has to be able to be seen from every angle. And I can't, so one of the things we did was the Kingsguard selection table and the markers on top of it. Yeah. And I cannot tell you how many times I said, can we paint the underside of the table? Can we add some detail to the underside of the table? Because they're shooting from down below and they'll see the underside of the table from down there. Please, can we do it? And in the classic, everybody is doing everything they can to make sure everything happens exactly the right way on the day. I got there in the morning, everything was there, all the markers were laid out, we were ready to go. And somebody down below, I think it was the supervising art director, he just shouted up, he was like, Ellie, there's something under your table. And I was like, what's under? And we both looked under, and a very, very conscientious prop person had put like a packet of anti-slip grippy mark things to go under the legs of the chair so it wouldn't damage the set. And they had they'd done it to the legs, lovely, and then they'd put the rest of it like underneath the table for safekeeping, because
just in case you needed more. Yeah, of course.
The underside of a table, it's a table, you're not looking under the table. And they like stapled it to the underside of the table like 4 times.
Your beautiful table.
And I was just like, myself and Lee were under the table when the director turned up. And, like, I had a Leatherman, he had a Leatherman. We were just like pulling staples. Like, it's fine, it's ready to go.
We're good to go.
Start up top. It'll be okay. Just start up top. No one will know I'm down here. Yeah.
I love that one. It became this sort of like hilarious, like overindulgent in sort of the best of ways. Way of just picking a night in this time of like high decadence and wealth, and trying to show like how do you convey that in stuff and the things that they do. And it's really just the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard with the hand of the king, with the princess sort of saying, okay, we need a new knight of the Kingsguard, here are our guys. But to illustrate, we've hand sculpted these 8 markers to represent the house that they're calling from. And they were all great, and the Jaehaerys scroll was really cool too, and that one actually ended up on screen. So if you go back in 4K, you can actually read the pronouncement that Viserys was chosen by the Great Council when the old king. It's the first scene of the pilot, the first episode, when the old king opens that scroll and shows it. I mean, unless Dave, unless you had something else. The other
thing
I
had one other question. Sorry, and it's, I guess for both of you guys, because I think people would be interested. You mentioned a little bit like when you first saw Ellie told the story when she showed you the first the kiln, what became the kiln. Like you mentioned, you brought up George, and I guess I was just curious where, you know, in terms of like, obviously you're not doing anything that breaks anything, but at the same time you're adding something that hasn't necessarily been mentioned or described. And is that a fun, cool thing when you kind of go, hey, we're doing these kilns, and he goes, oh my God, that's great. You know, like, is like, how
that's usually because he's so open and sort of, he's also a nerd. I mean, we had him on the podcast. He's just like us. And he's so open to all that stuff, as long as it's not, if it's not something that's contra to canon,
right?
If it's adding to, if it's a layer that's
what I mean, like adding to, just like we never thought about it, but of course it makes sense. I mean, but just that sort of fun moment of like, I don't know, you know, whatever, the Godfather blessing it, I guess.
Because we did a bunch of stuff around the Dragon Keepers. In the books, the Dragon Keepers are described as wearing this very, very elegant kind of black scaled armor. And you actually see it in the original books. At some point, I think Tyrion is walking through the Red Keep. See it. I mean, it's talked about, and he sees all these old suits of armor hung up, and it's an emblem to him. They're all dusty. It's an emblem to him of the great fallen empire of the Targaryens, because all the dragons are dead. The Targaryens are out of power, and here's this useless order that used to be. It used to be like the Swiss Guard. There's 77 of them. There's only ever that number. They're trained. That's their entire life to keep the dragons. But we, in the making of the show, we had sort of run into this bottleneck of we can only make so much armor per season, and it's not really a money thing, it's a time thing, because the origination of that stuff takes so long to build. Because each, like, if you have a breastplate that's like 3 plates, each one of those plates has to be individually originated, meaning essentially 3D printed, sculpted, shaped, you know, R&D'd, whatever, and then you have to mold it and go. So we're basically, in the first season, because we were starting completely from scratch, we had to go, you know, obviously
what's the important armor?
The knights need armor.
Yeah.
And then once we realized we couldn't really do that for the Dragon Keepers without having something else kind of fall apart, something more critical, we said, okay, well, they don't really need armor to defend against the dragons. It's just a ceremonial thing. So what actually would they be wearing? And we went the total opposite way and went with this monastic order. So that's what it led to. That problem kind of led to the whole thinking about the Dragon Keepers in a much different way, which led to this, you know, the staff instead of the whips and the chains and the things that they talk about, and the kiln, and them only speaking in Valyrian. At least the elders. There's an elder and there's an acolyte, and they work in pairs. And the elders give up English, the common tongue, at some point, and they only speak in High Valyrian, because that's the language of their gods, and that's how they speak to them. So all of that kind of led to now it's a fully formed thought about what this order is that take care of the dragon. So in a long answer to your question is, I sort of pitch all of that stuff back, and I just said, you're not going to see armor on the Dragon Keepers. This is why but this is what we did instead. Let me know what you think. And I mean, usually it's barrels of enthusiasm. And he really did love all of that stuff. Yeah. Cause he loves the dragons, so he loves all that stuff. So
no, it adds to the mythology. Yeah. I mean, there's something wonderful about, you know, you're talking about the eggs, and Ellie, you were talking about the long pole. I don't know.
Keeper staffs.
The keeper staff. Sorry. Yes. The official name. And I think
there's something, the dragon.
Right. I think there's something wonderful of House of the Sticks. I think there's something really wonderful just from a fan perspective for a second for both of you guys, where obviously there's no such thing as, you know, like I've never, you know, like, I don't know how you train a dragon, and I've seen all those movies, and I don't know how you train a dragon. And I love that you see something, and it not only doesn't throw you, you just go, well, no, of course that's what it would be. You know, like, of course it's a big stick. You know what I mean? And I don't know why, like that's the definition to me of a perfect prop, because it just, like, it's perfectly right, even though it doesn't exist. There's no reason it would be that. I mean, there is reasons, but you know what I mean? That's what a dragon trainer would use. Yeah.
It's one of those things where, like, the dragons are so big, how are you going to control them? The idea was to give them this long shepherd's stick because of the whipping noise it can make when it shakes and the banging it can make on the ground, because what else is going to influence the dragon?
No, but I just love it because it's like, yeah, what else? And of course it's just like, no, that's it. Yeah, good. Perfect.
It's a strong suggestion, that stick, instead of anything else. Yeah, and they this falls into the pointy objects, which Ellie is always points out to everybody. She doesn't deal with the pointy things
until they do deal with pointy things. Yeah,
into Master Armor's Tim's department, but they also carry a dragon glass dagger that they have, and it's dragon glass, but it's actually the hilt has been made, so it's not just like the raw like glass that's been shaped into a dagger. It's actually a ceremonial thing, with the idea that they actually make this thing at some point in their, just like a Jedi making a lightsaber at some point in their training, they make this thing. And there's a specific reason.
There's always two, the master and the Padawan. No, I get it.
Correct.
That's cool. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And they very good, Dave. I can't help myself. There's also a TIE fighter in this season. I made Ellie build it. She went to the plane breakers.
But it's
my hands are so sore.
It's a TIE fighter. I will say it's pretty cool. It's a TIE fighter with scales. So look for that in season 2. Season 2 spoiler. TIE fighter with scales. Yeah.
But yes, there's a specific reason that they carry that dragon glass dagger. So stay tuned. But yeah, it's fun because all of this stuff sort of led to once you have that central idea, you just run down the path of it. Now we have this kind of fully formed idea. And again, nobody ever speaks to this, as you said.
I'm going to make a guess. You don't have to say. You don't say yes or no. You don't say yes or no. Here's my guess: the dragon glass dagger is the only thing that somehow like can cut through like the utero sac in the birth of egg process. You don't have to make them. That's my guess based on nothing. Say nothing. Just we'll see if I'm close to anything. Ellie, there's a cat behind you. Ellie, there's a cat.
This is Billy. Billy was found in an IKEA bag, and he's named after the bookshelf.
Oh, I have a lot of those. I have a lot of those.
Very good. Very good.
Bye, Billy. Well, just super cool. And I'll ask one last quick question, Ellie. And you may have mentioned it already. Was the pig? If you had to pick a favorite, was it the pig? Or did you have a favorite from season 1, or is it too hard to choose among your babies?
All my babies, all my masks and crowns and everything. If I had a favorite, it's probably the tongs.
Oh.
Yeah, especially because the tongs and the dragon that the kids go around with all the time is made by the same blacksmith, so it's like torture weapon, kids toy. Like, so this blacksmith made both of them for us, and he's just like, I don't know what show you're making, but it's very strange. And
that's funny because I guess I didn't spend as much time looking at the tongs, but it's funny because Tim, I feel like Tim, our sword guy, showed me everything, but I think for whatever reason, we talked a lot about the tongue knife. So it didn't occur to me that also in that was how to grab a tongue, because there's a very specific kind of the blade and we're going to heat it, and how do we heat it, and how do it's something that we can actually put and fire on camera and then cut, and it's a CG tongue and a silicone tongue, so you can actually cut it and all that. But
it was historically accurate tongs, which I really enjoyed sending. It was historically accurate to a point. We did change the design a little bit, but the best part was we were getting really, really close to time, and I was like, I have to get this approved so fast. And I remember I texted the blacksmith. I was like, please, can you show us how the tongs works? I'm in the right meeting to show it off. And he sent back a picture of himself, like with his tongue out, tongs in hand.
And just going like,
and I was like, hey guys, would you like to see a blacksmith having too much fun? And that was it. And it passed like really quickly. And I don't think anybody thought that there should be a tongs, except for how are you going to get a person to stick their tongue out for long enough for you to cut it off? So that's one of those points where you're like, well, that prop exists, and even if people don't mention it.
Right, it's there. Well, but that, by the way, maybe is the definition of the prop person's guiding credo. Like, no one may mention it, but it's going to be there and it's going to be right. So that's kind of a cool thing. I was also thinking, by the way, of the blacksmith, like that night at the blacksmith bar, and it's like, what'd you do today? Horseshoes. What'd you do? Horseshoes. What'd you do? Horseshoes. What'd you do? Tongue grabber. Here's a picture. Here's a picture. Yeah.
Yeah, those were great. Man, you guys built so much fun stuff for us. There was the only one other thing that I wanted to talk about, just because you did two of them and they were really great, was the crowns. So there were three kind of main crowns on the show, and one of them was built by costumes, sort of by a jeweler, and that was Jaehaerys's crown, thus Viserys's crown, the gold crown. But then the other 2 crowns in the show were built by Ellie and her team, and that was the King of the Narrow Sea, the crown of the Stepstones that Daemon comes back with, the kind of homemade crown of the rib bones of his enemies, and then Aegon the Conqueror's crown, which we really love, which did have a basis in history and to whatever degree was described in the book, and we tried to honor that, within the aesthetic that we had created for the show and what we were looking at. And that one actually was pretty interesting because we had to decide on the design of that really early, because we were building those statues in the throne room, and Aegon the Conqueror's statue had to have wearing a representation of the crown. So we had to kind of land on something early, and then just a sort of shape, because it's an abstracted shape. So we had to land on the kind of silhouette, and then these guys had time to figure out how to actually build it and execute it.
That one was really interesting, because I definitely got the memo that art department needed the answer, like I think within like a week or something. And so I did some sketches, and I remember I stood by on set waiting to show the sketches off. I was like, which one of these 3 do you like? And none of them were picked. But then I got a sketch back by email, which was like almost a conglomeration of the 3 that I had sketched. I was like, oh, a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit. Okay, so I was somewhere in the right realm, but maybe that one was a bit too video game, and maybe that one was a bit too plain. But actually, if you put the 2 together, then we landed a lovely even point. So I got this sketch back that was like close but no cigar. I took it to Katie Hyatt, who's our 3D artist. Like she works on ZBrush, works in the computer, and she took it from there. She took all the like references that I had, and I showed her paint finishes, and I showed her jewels, and I showed her this and that, and I showed her the sketch, and I was like, I want this, but I want it to feel really real and weighty, like and like added pit marks, and pushed in some of the design, pushed out some of it to give it like highlights and lowlights, and that was a really interesting process. But the prop makers have this amazing way of making things nowadays that they didn't have when I first started, where they 3D print something, and you can send it to be copper plated, because copper has a lower melting point, and then you can plate in whatever metal you want after that. So it's then plated in nickel, which has obviously a higher melting point, but you're not melting the 3D plastic underneath. So it's actually a 3D printed crown.
So the copper is protecting it from what comes on later. Yeah. I gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it's a 3D print copper, nickel, and then a paint finish, and then like a jewel that we bought online. I was like, how expensive can I spend on a jewel before it becomes too expensive for my budget? But also it's Aegon's. Oh, it's Aegon's one, so I better spend a bit more. No, a bit more. And I'm like, we've got 1 jewel, don't lose it. So that was that whole process. Yeah. I remember being there on the day and just going, oh my God, I love it.
And it's amazing. I mean, it's great. And I feel like it really evokes, because his crown is described as being iron with a red ruby, or rubies inset. And we did 1 ruby to make it kind of, stand out and be at the center and not to, blow the budget. But it's really cool because it evokes all of that stuff. It feels brutalist in the way the Dragonstone architecture is, and that's what we kind of went with, this idea that Dragonstone Castle is the architecture of Old Valyria, because it's so different from everything else in Westeros, and that influenced the building of the Valyrian city, the model that Viserys is working on. And if you actually look closely at it, there's an important building in the back of the model that actually is the structure of Dragonstone Castle. So even the people that built Dragonstone were referencing a now non-existent, because it blew up and sunk into the sea, building from Old Valyria. But all of that stuff together, the crown evokes that same kind of architecture and that sensibility. So when Aegon won the throne, that the crown that he had made for himself was, built out of all of that that inspiration. And the thing that I loved about it is I held the 3D print the first time, and I said, okay, and how are we going to make it look like when an actor lifts this up, that it's not a weightless 3D printed thing? And Ellie said, aha, bear with me. And then came back and handed the near final thing to me when they were, kind of doing all the finishing touch paint on it, and it's this real proper weighty thing. You wouldn't know that it's a 3D print.
So you can legitimately go like that. Yeah.
And it's cold to the touch, and it's goddamn amazing. It's really great. I love that piece.
I changed my mind. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. That was a great day on set. And also knowing that 2 had to be made because we made one to the size of the actor's head, and then they put the wig on, and I was like, that doesn't fit anymore, so we're going to make it again.
Yep. It's cool. It's cool.
Very cool. I was gonna. Maybe you're headed there. So I feel like for everyone that has tuned in that has never listened to this show, they're sitting just like this now, like, enough about the season we've seen. Tell us something we don't know. So I'm speaking for our new audience that will not come back again until we have another House of the Dragon person on the show. But anyway, for them, our beloved fan base, you got to tell us something about the new season. Come on, just make with it.
Well, I'm not gonna hang Ellie out there, so I'll lead. But we've been doing a lot of R&D on. I've been investigating a lot of rat traps recently, so I will say that, and they're very cool. And that goes more to book readers, I think, than anything else. But yes. But stay tuned. And Dave, you've read the book, so I read
the book, so I actually know the reference.
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah. But they're really cool, and the great tradition of a crazy kind of interactive see it from every angle props will continue on
and Ellie, does that involve you just literally sometimes Googling like rat traps from the 1600s and stuff like that? Yeah,
of like what they, because there was a whole profession and everything. Right. Go ahead, Ellie, go ahead. Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, there's like a whole mood board of like rat catchers through the ages. There's one particular one with a guy like with them all on a stick and like a string of rats. It's brilliant. But I have found there's one guy on YouTube who, I kid you not, has like 1.5 million followers, who just shows you how to make rat traps from around the world in historical rat traps. And I've watched way too many of his videos. Like, so many. It's a good thing I'm not afraid of rats, because if I was, I'd be having awful problems out sleeping. Like, I wouldn't sleep. I've looked up mouse guillotines. Oh, that's a thing. I was definitely trying to make it like, so I don't know. Maybe I was trying to like have a heart, which is a type of rat trap. I was trying to make them like a nice rat trap. You know, they just get stuck inside. They'll be fine. But also like definitely have to kill some rats because they're rat catchers. So I've been looking up like worse ones. Like here's a rat guillotine, and here's one that that's not a nice thing to do to a rat. Even if they're ruining your food, I wouldn't do that to it. Yeah, it's been great crack actually, looking all that up. Research is half the fun of the job, is like finding out what other people do with their jobs.
I was just gonna say, FYI, New York City is looking for a chief rat person. They have a huge rat problem right now, and they're looking for someone to just something. If
is that a rat supervisor or a master rat catcher?
Master rat catcher, yeah, no, but it would definitely be a bump up. So that's something. Yeah.
I can do it. Yeah. I can do it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ellie. This has been totally brilliant, as is your work. So we're incredibly grateful for that and for you guesting. We typically play a game at the end of every episode, and I'm a bit at a loss today because I'm doing these sort of what do you do, Dave? Do you have
Ellie,
something?
Do you have a favorite movie? Not one you've necessarily worked on. Do you have your all-time favorite movie? Maybe the thing that sent you to film school. Maybe just something that you've just always loved. What's your favorite movie?
Quite topical at the minute. My favorite movie is Brendan Fraser's The Mummy.
Oh, all right. That fantastic. Is a great movie. All right. Well, this is perfect. Yeah.
Absolute favorite. When I moved to London, I didn't know what a prop house was, but I knew somebody had sent me to it. I went for a job interview. I didn't get it, but they said, "Hey, get a job in a prop house. You'll get jobs from there." So I turned up at a prop house. I was too afraid to knock on the front door, so I went around the loading bay entrance because that's where I felt more at home. And the loading bay guys gave me a tour of the prop house, where they brought me into the room that was full of the Mummy props. Just props from the Mummy. And I went nuts for this. I went absolutely nuts for this, to the point where the guy from the loading bay, who I can't get in trouble now because it's more than 10 years ago, I'm sure there's statute of limitations, just handed me this guy.
Oh, wow. Bravo.
Oh, awesome.
And I have loved him ever since. He's come with me like
that's so
through
great.
everything. I was too excited to actually apply for a job at that place. But I did get a job at their sister company, and they were very good to me. So it all worked out.
That is excellent.
That's
we play this game where basically we pick a movie or something related to what we've been talking about, obviously because we're collectors, and sort of the game is if you could have any prop in your collection, and obviously your collection, which is kind of cool, by the way, and we didn't even really talk about this, but I was just going to say, I love that you keep some stuff, because I definitely think there are people that work on things and don't keep anything. You know what I mean? Like they don't have the interest in keeping anything. Again, not necessarily the desire of I'm quote unquote building a prop collection, but even just, I just like
I'm proud of the work.
Yeah, I'm proud of the work / personal memorabilia. These are things that help me remember that moment of my life, which I'm a big fan of. You know, I always try and take something from every show I've worked on. Again, not that I think it's going to be worth anything, but just again, like this was something I loved working on. So I really do love that. So you didn't, obviously, we'll go back to The Mummy, which is if you could have anything just sitting behind you on your, on your bookshelf, like something for your quote unquote collection from The Mummy, is there a prop that jumps out at you that you remember from the movie that you would pick?
Yeah, it's the Book of the Dead and the key that went with it.
The key thing is fantastic.
I got to see them in the flesh in Prop Store of London in November, and it was the greatest moment. Like I just spent I think I spent like an hour with them, just being like, pretty, so pretty. And got to play with it, and they showed me how to use it, and they went in 2 different lots, so they'll never be seen together again, potentially. You don't have it. If you guys have split it between you, please can I have another look at it?
No. But Dave did look at you.
We've talked about it. I definitely stared at it. That movie holds up for me. One of the things I've enjoyed about the whole Brendan Fraser renaissance has been, I feel like people are remembering The Mummy in a good way. You know what I mean? Like it just seemed like
Renaissance.
It was like yes, the Frasersons, yeah. But the people are kind of coming back, going, "Oh yeah, that was pretty good." Yeah, so I have enjoyed that. No, I never actually pulled the trigger, but I definitely stared at it tremendously. That's a good movie.
That is a
Stephen Sommers,
great
right?
movie.
Yeah,
those are the first one particularly is really, really great. What about you, Dave?
Well, I probably would have said that, but I'll pick something else just to pick something else. I would be curious. I mean, I know they're CGI eventually, but I do love, those beetles that kind of like start off as a jewel and then they come alive. Like the jewel form.
The scarabs.
Yeah, the scarab would be very, very cool. The sort of before the CGI takes over and they go scrambling all over the place and up into the guy's skin and stuff. But I think that would be really, really, really cool. That, or maybe like I don't know, like a set of eyes or something, because that's cool too.
Yeah. I like. I love all that stuff. The books are so great, and the key, and all the story stuff with that. I like the maps. I mean, there were just a ton of great maps on that show. I actually really like his costume because I think it's evocative without being kind of overdone, because you could kind of overdo it in that world.
I get huge credit for not ripping off Indiana Jones, which obviously is a huge reference point for this movie. I mean, again, you just have to assume it was, and yet managed to come up with something that is equally lead / explorer / swashbuckling, but without being derivative of the leather jacket hat look, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, completely. I remember we a bunch of friends and I we saw that in college, and because I think that was 1999, right? It was that great film year where all those amazing, like Fight Club and American Beauty. It was like the Sixth Sense. It was that crazy year. But we went and saw the movie and just loved it. And we were big Indiana Jones fans, and everybody's like, all the snobs were like, "Oh, it's just Indiana Jones all over again." And my friend Jim was like, "Why? Because it has sand in it." It was a complete. He was so incensed. It was a completely different movie. But yeah, I would go with the costume, and I think up to and including his revolvers, because I feel like even though they were off the shelf, you could tell they had done stuff to them, like he had sawed off the barrel or like redone the grip or whatever on the handle to make them kind of special and bespoke. So I would go with like his ensemble. There you go. Great pick, Ellie.
What is his name? Anyone in the movie? Rick? Is it Rick something?
Rick O'Connell.
Rick O'Connell. God, look at you. You really do know that movie.
Really do know.
Well done.
Yeah. I got Rick. I thought that was good.
Benny.
Yeah.
Benny is the
Benny.
little.
By the way, you know what I love?
Right? Yeah.
Benny's necklaces would be a great prop.
Yeah.
Remember when he's got all of them and he's trying every one of them and he kind of gets to the Jewish star and it's like the mummy's like the language of this, the language of the slaves or whatever. Yeah. That was very cool. Ellie, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead. You were about to say.
I was going to say, if I was going to veer into costumes, can I have the librarian outfit with the glasses that Evie wears, like right at the beginning, and then like knocks the whole place down? Like if I'm going to have a costume from it, that's the one.
Right, Rachel Weisz. I think that was. I mean, I imagine she was in something indie before that, but to me, that was
where
my
the world first
awareness
went. Who's that?
of Rachel Weisz.
Exactly.
Yeah, really good. Good. Well done.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. This was just great. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
What else can we say, Ryan?
Join us again next week. Thank you, Ellie Murphy. Please. Join
us again next week. And for all you House of the Dragon fans, we're definitely going to have someone from House of the Dragon next week. So you should tune in. Even if the show, when you look it up, doesn't say there's somebody from House of the Dragon there, there'll be someone from House of the Dragon.
It'll be buried in there.
Yeah, you should check that show out. Yeah, all the shows actually mention House of the Dragon. You should like and download all of them because they all.
We're going to have the Drapes Master on eventually. So follow us on social media at Props Podcast. Rate us on all your platforms. Please subscribe, download, watch us on YouTube. You can see Ellie holding up various things from the shows that we talked about, and we'll post pictures in the Instagram and Twitter feed of all the things that we talked about this week, and we will be back next week. So tune in. Oh, and also write us at dreamsaremadeofpodcast@gmail.com with your questions. And your questions for Ellie.
I didn't even pretend to do the email this week. I just let you just do it. I didn't pretend. Yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Bye, everyone.